That concludes our agenda. We are now under reports. Mr. Beach?
No report, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, no report. Mr. Berman?
Very briefly, I am seeking advice concerning litigation in relation to settlement matters or strategy sessions related to Rocket Outdoor Advertising LLC versus City of Pompano Beach, Florida, United States District Court Case 15 CV 62292, Judge Huck. Those in attendance, it is planned to be Dennis Beach, City Manager, City Commission members, of course, myself, City Attorney Mike Burke of Johnson & Selmo, outside counsel. This is be requested for January 10, 2017, at a time certain at 7:30 p.m. Thank you. One other brief matter. There is some good news. I'll be forwarding you some memorandum as soon as I write them regarding the long-standing case, Associated Builders and Contractors versus the City of Pompano Beach. We've got an order today. They were denied class certification and class status, and that may be certainly appealed, but that's good news for us. So I figured I'd give you some good litigation news for a change.
Yeah, all right.
To end my stint here tonight. Thank you.
Okay.
Good for you. Ms. Hammond?
No report at this time, but I'd just
Okay.
like to wish everybody Merry Christmas, Happy New Year,
Holidays.
Happy holidays.
Thank you. Commissioner Hart?
Thank you, Mayor. Just happy holidays to everyone. We won't have another commission meeting until next year, so happy holidays, everybody. Also, I just noticed on the iPad thing here that it's down to 9% power, so we need to remember on these kind of meetings to bring our power cords with us. Yeah, I didn't even think about it. It was fully charged before I came, but it's like, whoa. So we got to watch these meetings. Mr. Beach, you mentioned it to me before, I can't remember. The bulk pickup issue, that's winding its way through city staff, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so we're still shooting to have that thing raised, the 4 cubic yard limit done away with.
We are assessing what's going to be involved in doing that, and we'll make the commission aware of that as soon as we have it put together.
Okay, let's keep working on that, because that's a big issue for folks. Thank you.
Very good. Commissioner Voss?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Two things. On a recent visit to the McNair Center, I was standing out there campaigning and noticed that the sign for the McNair Center is a stationary wooden sign that faces east and west. It's also quite old and it's broken. 27th Avenue is a north-south street, so anyone driving by the McNair Center is not going to see the sign until they're right on top of it. And I've spoken to Mr. Beach, and they've asked about the possibility of having a new sign put at the McNair Center, but one that is like the EPAT Larkins Center. There's no place in Collier City where community announcements can be made. And if we had an electronic sign like we have at the Larkins Center, announcing football games for the Cowboys or the Collier City Civic Association meeting, if it were a north-south facing sign, anyone driving up the main street of Collier City would be able to see those pronouncements. Yeah. So I've asked them to look into it, and I hope maybe we can come back with a proposal and maybe get that done. I think it would be something that would be important, and the residents of Collier City would appreciate. Another thing that's been brought to my attention is that on that east-west street where the Jan Moran Library is that 6th Street?
I think it is, yeah.
There's a lot of after-school activity there with kids from the Drew School going to the Jan Moran, a lot of kids also at the McNair Center. And one of my constituents asked about the possibility of getting, they said a camera, but I thought a license plate reader at the corner to read the license plate of anyone that goes in that street and comes out of that street, because there's such a large concentration of children, particularly after school. So I'm not sure what's involved in that, how expensive it is, but it's something that the community is asked about and has expressed an interest in.
Right. Can LETF funds get on that, Chief?
If they can, and how they were funded for the existing locations, I think that would be a fantastic addition to our.
Okay, so will you work on that for us, if you would, please?
We'll see what we can do.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
That's all. And everyone, happy holidays. Thank you.
Very good. Commissioner Perkins?
Okay, Mayor, I have three items I wanted to discuss. First, I wanted to congratulate Lamar Jackson from Pompano Beach receiving the Heisman Award.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was hoping that we could possibly recognize him with the proclamation.
100%.
I thought, I was very excited to know that he was born and raised in Pompano, you know.
Yeah,
so-
and Ron Thurston has contacted us, and actually, there's twofold, is Reverend Mohorn called yesterday. He's trying to put together a parade
Oh, wonderful. Great.
for that, and then also I told Ron Thurston, because Ron's very close to Lamar, that we would like to recognize him at the commission level for a proclamation. So he's just trying to work his schedule, because he's so darn
Great,
busy right
great.
now.
That's
So
needed.
hopefully we can get those two things, Commissioner Perkins. We get the parade as well as the proclamation.
Great. I would love to be a part of that. The second item I want to talk about was the our Broward County Commissioner, Mark Bogan. I wanted to commend him because he has been working on, you know, everybody's been complaining about the railroad tracks on Northwest 15th.
Yes.
He's been working on that, he and his staff, for about 6 months, and they've finally come to an agreement with the South Florida Regional Transportation and Florida Department of Transportation.
Very good.
So he just wanted to make us aware that it's a done deal, they're going to work on it, and he's going to keep me updated based on the progress of it.
Awesome.
So we're happy to hear about that, because we've been getting a lot of complaints about that for at least 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
So we commend him for that. The last thing I wanted to say is I really want to thank the staff here at the city for taking the time out to explain to me what you do on your job and how you do it. I was given a tour of the city, and it was an unusual tour, because when you live here, you really don't get a tour the way I received it. So I just want to say that every district is different when it comes to getting a response and things done. I want to add to it, moving forward for the new year, that we come up with a different vision for Pompano, and also a vision of progress, in other words, for all districts, so that we can be a little more balanced, okay? With that being said, I'd love to just say Happy New Year, Merry Christmas, and Happy Holidays. Thank you.
Very good. And we're going to be having that strategic meeting coming up, too, which we can talk about that,
The
Commissioner
vision,
Perkins.
yes, the vision.
For sure. Commissioner Sobel.
Thank you, Mayor, and fellow commissioners and clerk, actually everybody that's here. I meant it when I said earlier how proud I am to be part of the Pompano Beach government, how gracious and embracing the city staff and the CRA and the clerk's office has been to me. It's actually been surprisingly, I shouldn't say that, it's been overwhelming to me how much people have helped me as I've tried to do the best I can for the residents as a whole and my district in particular, and I wish everybody coming forward a very happy and healthy holiday season and new year. There's always some growing pains, I assume. I have tremendous respect for everybody sitting up here on the dais, and I know everybody's heart is in the right place, including mine. And we're going to work through it all and make it happen for good reason in the future, because the reason is the residents of Pompano Beach. I will always be a practicing attorney because I love it, and at the same time, I love my part-time that has become almost a full-time job. It's the best $16 an hour that the city of Pompano Beach will ever spend.
Wait a minute. Give it a month or two, you're going to be a lot lower in pay scale, buddy.
I would like to just say two important things to me on the public record. One is about Tony and Angela Hill, who were here as my appointments tonight, and the other one is about the advisory boards in general. With regard to being so proud of this government and what we can do as a government, I would say what we did to them today was perhaps government at its worst. It was an abuse and I think an impingement on their constitutional rights, either settle a lawsuit that isn't actually in existence, or else give up their right to be on a on a board that they're well qualified to be on and give back to the community that they live in and love is wrong factually, is wrong legally, is a tremendous disgraceful abuse of our power.
In your opinion?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
In my opinion. And Mr. Moss, or Commissioner Moss, one thing that isn't my opinion is the erroneous factual statements that you made about your basis for it. And I think also likewise, perhaps an error was made in unilaterally denying an opportunity to rectify and correct some of your wrongful statements.
Well, we
But
will
in-
agree to disagree. I don't believe there was anything wrong with
I'm
it.
sorry, I don't remember interrupting you, Commissioner. But
Continue on, sir.
thank you, Mayor. But the reality is that sometimes lawsuits have merit, assuming they are even filed, and sometimes they don't. And I think all of us on the dais learned that very well this evening in particular. But to discriminate against private citizens for exercising their inherent constitutional rights when there is no, in reality, conflict, when I checked with our joint attorney who confirmed in advance that there was absolutely no conflict of interest with appointing either of them, and he rendered that opinion to me, correct, Mr. Berman? So,
That is correct, sir.
and if there had been, like in all the instances we discussed tonight, they could theoretically recuse themselves even if that situation existed. So what we did today was really abuse our positions in taking people who could really contribute much to this community, and we stepped on them with our power. And that's something I never want to be a party to again, and I'm hoping over the course of time things get better. I think what happened here tonight was a tremendous loss for the residents of Pompano Beach, because you had two terrifically bright and well-educated and common-sense people who could have and will still do well for this city government. And you clearly discriminated against them, and I'm sorry that I was a party to that. With regard to the advisory boards, having just gone through the canons of ethics with the Office of Inspector General, I think it's incumbent upon us as elected officials. We appoint these individuals, and each one of the genre are completely different, as you well understand, and I've harped on it tonight a bit in terms of the powers that each one of these boards have. And some of them are pecuniary powers, and some of them have tremendous impact on the direction of the city. We have a duty, morally, legally, and ethically, to make sure every single advisory board member understands what the canons of ethics are for the state of Florida, understands what the sunshine laws are, understands the per se rules on employment, understands the gift rules and the rules of getting things of value, understands the conflict of interest. I've addressed this issue and contacted the Office of Inspector General, and I think our city completely fails with 29 boards, including actually on the CRA, to make sure that our advisory board members understand what we as elected officials understand, because most of them are bound by the same rules that we are, including the sunshine laws. And we recently faced a lawsuit, and I guess we're still facing a lawsuit that I saw filed that directly involves a former advisory board member and allegations of payments received from developers. And that, whatever the history of it was, has now resulted in a potential exposure to the city taxpayers of about $500,000, and that's public record. And my first response to that, to reading that lawsuit, was, how do the advisory board members in this city not have documentation on record like we have documentation? Just as an employee of the city of Pompano Beach, you have to sign a disclosure agreement. You have to sign information that you've received certain booklets and information so as to protect us, to protect the residents and the city officials. So what I'm proposing is that Mr. Berman be asked to put together affirmation, a sworn affirmation for all of the advisory board members to execute on an annual basis, just like we do with our ethics training, explaining that somehow confirming that each one of these advisory board members is aware of their duties and obligations under the Florida canons of ethics, that they're aware of the Sunshine Law, they understand the nuances of what it means, and let's face it, it makes a big difference whether you're on perhaps a nuisance abatement board or a planning and zoning board. It has a tremendously different impact in terms of conflict of interest and in terms of value, getting things of value, and we just need to protect the city, I think, in making sure that the lawsuit like the one that just was filed never happens again, by making sure that each one of the advisory board members signs an acknowledgement letter of what their duties and responsibilities and obligations are, just like we've had to do. So if nobody else up here has an objection, I'd like to ask if, I don't know if I'm overstepping, you guys know I'm first day on the block.
Mr. Berman, is my understanding that all the advisory boards goes through Sunshine and Ethics, training, I guess, is what it is.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, this can be done, but at the same time, we have to make sure we give them the training before we have them sign off that they know what's going on. We've been discussing in my office, for example, Planning and Zoning Board and Zoning Board of Appeals doing their annual training now that new people are being appointed.
Right.
And also the other boards. I know the CRA boards, the CRA takes it upon themselves to give them the training.
Right.
But you know, this is doable. I'll certainly be happy to see what we can do. We just have to make sure, though, that before we make them sign that they understand all of these things, that we give them the knowledge and the education on these matters to make them comfortable signing this, which is all doable. It's all
And I don't know, it helps all of us, and I don't know if it's if there's a disparity of treatment with the bylaws of these different advisory boards, but my understanding is we hand them a booklet, and some of them have training for the particular advisory board they're on, but not with regard to the issues I'm talking about. There's no training. It's essentially, here's your booklet, and there's not even an acknowledgement that they've received the booklet other than we say we gave it to them. So there's so much more that we have a duty to do as elected officials to make sure that these community volunteers, and they're terrific, they're all community volunteers wanting to help the community, but it's sometimes easy to cross the line without perhaps even knowing it, because these laws are so stringent and they're so particular, and there's a good reason for all of them.
I'll be happy to do whatever the commission would like. If you think that would be helpful, I think we should take a second look at what we're doing in terms of training.
Yeah, let's take a look at actually what we're doing and get back with a memo with the commissioners, exactly what specific training we're doing now, what can be recommended, and then even inclusion of a signed document.
Sure.
Let's get back to what we're doing first so we can dissect it.
I'm happy to help you write a signed an affirmation proposal that each of them should sign to acknowledge it, so that the city's
think that would
protected
be
in the
right.
future.
I will make some room in my office for you, as a matter of fact.
right.
So, no, that's fine.
You take off one hat when you put on the other one.
Just
Anything
want
else,
to...
Commissioner Silva?
I'll be more than happy to work on this with you guys, so that's fine. Whatever the commission would like me to do with this regard, I think it benefits everybody. It makes sure that our volunteers have the proper knowledge and instruction to not get themselves in any trouble. Although the one case you're talking about, that was a little different, but I think we can certainly make it better, or look to make it better.
And actually, it isn't different. Had that case had a signed affirmation that they knew they weren't allowed to be engaging in that activity, it would have completely
This is
changed.
actually a case pending. I think we're getting...
Yeah, we're not gonna get into
No, no, that's the case, yeah, that's the case in chief. This is,
I get it.
that case is over with. This is a
No, actually,
subsequent...
there's a refile that they're requesting attorney's fees and so
The
forth.
case has been filed against the CRA. The CRA
Oh,
is...
that one I was...
We just want to make sure that we...
Okay. Well, thank you, you've made my point. Certainly, had that been signed years ago, it might have had a tremendous impact on the outcome, if not prevented it entirely.
Anything else, Commissioner Silva?
just thank you for everybody for any patience you've had to exercise. I'm
Vice
used
Mayor?
to saying that to my wife. I'm going to say it to you, too.
Vice Mayor?
I was asked some time ago, well, not really some time ago, not too long ago, we invited the children from the schools to come in to do the Pledge of Allegiance. And now I know I'm involved in Pompano Elementary. You guys are in Crest Haven, and Commissioner Morse is Pompano Elementary, and Commissioner Sobel's involved in Pompano Elementary. That if we could do this like we invite the ministers to come, if we could rotate the grade schools or whatever, invite these children in, you know, then and let the teachers pick who it's going to be to come in and have them lead the Pledge of Allegiance. I think it would be good for the children to learn what their local government is. When they come here, their parents will come with them, and it may even teach their parents a little bit about what local government is, and start the meeting off with a smile instead of grumpiness. And
Actually, Ann Siren was was to spearhead that. She had brought that forward, but it kind of dropped through the thing. I love the idea of having one of our elementary school students come here.
That is a great idea, but it's interesting, we, at the firefighters event we just had, they actually had Pompano Elementary there, their color guard actually led the pledge for us.
Well, that was great. I was actually feeding the poor that day.
Yeah, right.
And I had already committed doing that, so I couldn't be in two places at the same time.
But yeah, it's a great idea.
So, I mean, it'd make Ann Siren happy, it'd make me happy, it'd make other people happy, get our children involved. And other than that, I'd have a bunch of other things, but not at this hour of the morning. I'd just like to wish everyone a happy, healthy, and safe holiday season, and the same for the new year, and we'll see you all next year. Actually, we still have a CRA meeting, but we don't have a commission meeting. Thank you.
Very good. Just a couple of quick items, but one is very important. Even though it's late, it's going to, I wanted to talk briefly about it. Number one is several items on tonight's agenda was given to local businesses. I like that. Second thing is, I would like to get the commission's support to move forward with the RFP for the amphitheater to see what's out there so that we can have a comparison to
Absolutely.
ZCA.
Yeah,
Great idea.
absolutely.
So you got, Mr. Beach, you've got that wherewithal to do so. And thirdly is that Mr. Beach, as you all know, is going to be retiring as our city manager. He has done a yeoman's job, and it was a great fit for our community during his service, which leaves the commission once again with the opportunity to look at new venues. And there's two really avenues you can go. You can go outside, which we've done before, or we can go with inside. And so personally, I just like to recommend us coming within and looking at Mr. Greg Harrison. I think he's proven himself. I think he understands the inner works of our community and of our city. I think that the strategic plan's in place. We're getting ready to obviously tweak that a little bit. The vision's in place. And I think it would be a smooth transition coming in to the new year. Mr. Beach has said that he wishes to fully retire in the 1st of February. We only have this meeting, and then, of course, in January. So I would like to get the commission's support to move forward to have Mr. Berman bring forth a contract that we can look at our first meeting in January from Mr. Harrison.
Yeah, Mayor, I would agree with that. You know, and I agree. We could go outside or inside, but we do. We've got a good team established right now, and things are going in the right direction. That's fairly apparent from the recent elections, where a lot of us are still sitting up here. So, yeah, I think Greg could do a good job. I think we ought to go ahead and have Mark start the negotiation process, and let's move forward with that.
Yeah, no golden parachutes.
No, I don't think we need all that kind
And
of
all
stuff.
that in there, but we just need a simple contract that we can look at in January, so.
Yes, I
everybody-
totally agree. I totally
We got
agree. I
1,
do
2,
not
3.
think that this
Okay, now,
commission
can
needs
Mayor-
to go outside and pay $75,000 for somebody to go out on a national search when we have someone in this city that you say, Mayor, has proven himself. He knows this city. He lives in this city, and I think he kind of likes us. So I go
He did a
along
great
with
job with
that.
Shipwreck Park.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, Shipwreck Park, he's got one other thing he's got to get done.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Commissioner Perkins had a comment.
So explain to me what's going to happen. You said in January, you expecting what from?
Well,
Greg?
Mr. Berman will work with Mr. Harrison and bring back a contract for us to approve and move forward. Usually what happens is, in this scenario, the city attorney negotiates and for us to look at and eventually approve. So that's what would happen.
Yeah, I'd like to commend Greg Harrison. You know, we work well together. However, I would like us to consider looking out with nationwide search.
Okay, so
That's just
you're
my
looking for a
take.
search, okay?
No disrespect to him, he's doing a great
Understand.
job, but just to see what else is out there. You just never know.
Understand?
That's just my
Commissioner Moss, do you have a
suggestion.
feeling on it?
I don't, I'm listening.
Okay. Commissioner Sobel, do you have a feeling on it?
I do have a feeling. I would like to do both. We have a tremendous candidate here who, just over the past 3 weeks of being in office, I've grown to admire and I think does a terrific job and is able to fit the bill. But if it ever seems like I'm saying or doing something that's obstinate or argumentative, let me just say that I never lose sight of everything I am trying to do with what is in the best interests of the residents as a whole. And in this particular case, this is a monumental step forward for the city. I researched when Mr. Harrison and some others were talking to me about city managers, what we had done in the past. And in the past, we had gone out and done a search at least to see what is out there. This really isn't about $75,000. That's peanuts in city government. My gosh, let's call it a consulting contract. We can double it and nobody will blink an eye. That was sarcasm, I apologize.
Yeah, no kidding.
But what I'd like to say is that we should have great faith in knowing that as acting city manager, we have Mr. Harrison here. And at the same time, we shouldn't deny the residents the opportunity, or ourselves, to see what else is out there, because we really have no idea. And we've used these national search places at the time, over the past many times, and they've worked very successfully. I think that's how we got Mr. Beach. So why not have Mr. Harrison continue and know that he, as acting city manager, who he can prove himself and continue to prove himself, at least to the two new commissioners who've just been here a few weeks and already continue to prove himself to and his worth to the other commissioners, and at the same time take the appropriate steps to interview and see who might be out there and available that could even likewise take us to another level that we can't even imagine right now. What's the downside? For the residents, it's the right thing to do. So I'd like to have the best of both worlds. I'd like to have this amazing acting city manager, Mr. Harrison, and at the same time see what else is out there.
And we did that. We went out the first time after Mr. Hargett retired, and we had Mr. Chadwell.
Oh, yeah.
Which, you know, Mr. Chadwell.
Didn't work too well.
And then we, of course, you know, time we didn't have, I know Ms. Corab didn't want to continue as the city manager, so we didn't have a staff or within talent to tap into, and that's why we went out, obviously, with after Mr. Hargett, and then, of course, after Mr. Chadwell. And I'm just saying, if we go with acting, which is fine, but acting is acting, and the staff and so forth kind of wants to sit back and not maybe make the necessary changes that we wanted to make our city better, and it might stifle us to some extent. But again, I just, the outside component, when you have inside talent that is there, I just would hate to lose that.
Mayor?
Jordan?
Yeah, no, and there's no wrong answer here. I mean, let's start out with there's no wrong answer. But from a consistency standpoint and a continuation standpoint, having an acting for some period of time while we're searching and all that, it does. It sends a different message to staff and to the public out there. And one thing that I'm very proud of Pompano Beach is that out in the public, they look at us now as a very stable community, a very government-wise, very stable and consistent, and they know Pompano Beach. They can, people look at us now as kind of a beacon of saneness in city government, and to have an acting, and that's kind of balls up in the air. Well, what's going on in Pompano? I don't know, because they got an acting. They're looking. On top of which, an acting, yes, you want them to do the best job possible, and I'm sure they would, whoever the acting would be, but they are not going to take certain steps which they may feel are necessary. Nothing against Mr. Beach, but there may be some things that he didn't do quite as well as some other people might do. So for somebody who's just acting, I think they might be a little hesitant to take the steps necessary to really move this city forward. And that's
Keep it moving, yeah.
We've gotten to this point, and I understand we got a couple of new commissioners here, and then you could say, well, okay, they've elected us for a change, and I understand that, but there's still a lot of momentum, a lot of good things have been happening, and we're all still sitting up here, the four of us are still sitting up here, which indicates that people think that we're going in the right direction. I'd like to keep us going in that same direction. And I know the policy starts from the commission level, but it needs to be implemented by the city manager. And to have a consistent, city manager on board, I think that's an important step. Like I said, there's no wrong answer, but that's just my feeling.
Well,
So it looks like we've got 3 that want to
And then-
continue to.
and this guy.
Commissioner Moss, it's just.
I get to be a man of mystery and intrigue.
Yes, yes.
This hour of the morning.
I'm inclined to go along with the three of you. I think that Mr. Harrison's done a very fine job. I wouldn't be opposed if you looked elsewhere.
Yeah,
right.
But I think he's done a fine job, and I agree that continuity is very important.
So why
I
not,
find no
Mr.
fault with him at all.
Berman, if you
back
kind of back on to your duties of working with Mr. Harrison, bring something forward for us consideration, okay, in January?
Yes.
Our first meeting in January?
It's a good thing that ship went down straight.
Yeah, there you go.
No, it'll be my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Sometimes what I like about it, and I miss this opportunity to talk to everybody, because under the sunshine laws, we obviously can't. And I think the sunshine law had a great intent, but has sometimes a terrible byproduct that we
Always
can't
does.
just
It is.
sit down. I'm sure you'd all agree with me on that, because communication is key to everything.
Yeah, that's right.
And there's nobody sitting up here who isn't saying Mr. Harrison hasn't done and isn't capable of doing a phenomenal job. At the same time, we change auditors because sometimes fresh eyes are good, and I love the fact that everybody up here will continue to challenge me and my ideas as well, and I'll rethink them all. Maybe that's just the lawyer in me, but I try to be objective about it afterward. I do think we might be selling ourselves short and just by not trying to see what else is there. It doesn't take long for the process. And at the same time, I have every faith in Mr. Harrison's integrity that he's going to do the best possible job no matter what. Acting or not acting, he's fantastic. But at the same time, some people might say the status quo isn't always the best way to go, because people develop relationships and it's hard to challenge ideas, as we've seen tonight.
I'm still on the report, so real quick. Mr. Beach, I just want to make a comment about this, and I'm not going to end it on a bad note, but it's very hard for me to understand that months and months ago, we decided to put a fob system in our dog park, and it still not exists today. We had a dog that unfortunately killed another dog, and I think that, and I was looking at emails back and forth about a tree and about electric, and anyway, so if you look into that to kind of expedite getting that fob system in place so we can have the registration properly, and that can hopefully prevent any further accidents, okay? Other than that, again, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy Hanukkah to everybody, and we'll see you on the first years at commission level, but again, we'll see you next week as a CRA level. Thank you.